This girl's nose and ears resemble a pig's since birth. When she was born in the hospital, her parents were scared of seeing her. She is of marriageable age now. Whenever any suitor comes for her, everyone gets scared and avoids her. But why is this happening to this girl? Will she ever be normal? What has happened to her until now? To know that, you'll have to watch our video till the end. And at the end of the story, there's a twist that will leave you amazed. So, let's start the story. This is a wealthy family in England. Everyone in England knows this family as the Wilharn family. For almost 1,000 years, this family has been living in England with quite a reputation. This family is so influential that any incident in their family is printed in the newspapers as news. When this girl was born into the Wilharn family, her parents lovingly named her Penelope. As her family was the center of attention in the country, Penelope's pig-like nose and ears were no secret. Despite many journalists attempting to take her picture, none succeeded. Penelope's mother always kept her hidden. Eventually, a journalist sneaked into the Wilharn family's house to capture Penelope's photo. But he was caught by Mrs. Wilharn, who beat him severely with a stick, causing him to lose an eye. Realizing the need to divert attention from Penelope, Mrs. Wilharn staged a play of Penelope's death and spread the news everywhere that their only daughter Penelope had died. From then on, they never let Penelope leave the house. Nobody outside their family knew there was a girl in the house. They educated Penelope within the confines of their home. Alone in her room, Penelope grew up. When she reached marriageable age, it was believed in the Wilharn family that if anyone from a noble family married Penelope, it would lift the curse upon their family, and Penelope would return to normalcy. Penelope's mother secretly hires an agency to arrange a marriage for Penelope. She informs the agency that if anyone from a suitable family agrees to marry Penelope, they are willing to offer a hefty dowry. The agency then sends Penelope's proposal to eligible bachelors from other relevant families in the city for several consecutive days. However, every time the suitors catch sight of Penelope, they get scared and run away. Nevertheless, Penelope's mother doesn't give up hope. Year after year, she continues her efforts to find Penelope a good match from a respectable family. In this way, Edward is also sent from the agency. Edward was waiting in the waiting room for the groomsmen. Since the agency never mentioned anything about Penelope's appearance being unpleasant, Edward eagerly awaits there for Penelope. When Penelope suddenly opens the door and enters the room, like the other suitors, Edward also gets scared and runs away from there. Edward goes directly from there to the police station. He tells the police officer there about everything that happened and requests him to arrest Penelope. The police then ask him, "Why should we arrest her? Having a bad face is not a crime." But Edward insists that Penelope is a monster and tells the police officer, "If I didn't run from there, she would have eaten me." The police officer, annoyed, says, "Who is this guy? This boy has gone mad. Put him in jail for the night and release him in the morning." At that police station, there was also a young journalist. He sees all this. Since Edward was the son of a wealthy family, the journalist published news in the newspaper the next day that the son of an English family had gone mad. The next morning, when Edward is released from the police station, he goes to his house and sees the news from the newspaper in front of his house. He immediately rushes to the newspaper office and finds the news reporter, saying, "I'm about to become the next chairman of our company. How much of a threat do you think this kind of news is for my future? If you don't retract this news right away, I'll drown you in the river." The news reporter, without saying much, immediately calls security to take Edward away from there. As security comes to take Edward away, he starts crying out, "I haven't gone mad! I have seen that girl, the one from the Wilharn family with a pig's nose. Please, someone, believe me." At that moment, an old lost journalist named Lemon, who was going there, hears Edward's words. Lemon tells the security personnel, "Let him go. I know this person." Since Lemon held an important position in the newspaper office, the security personnel let Edward go. Lemon takes Edward in her car, and Edward opens up about everything between them. Lemon then says he lost his eye because of the matter, and couldn't see that girl with his own eyes. They both agree they need enough evidence before anyone will believe that the girl, a pig-faced member of the famous Wilharn family, exists. To gather evidence, they hire a person named Joanie, a renowned gambler in the city. Lemon and Edward meet Joanie and connect him with the agency by introducing him as a member of a rich family. Some days later, Joanie calls to arrange a meeting with Penelope. Before Joanie leaves, Lemon hands Joanie a separate suit and tells him there's a camera set in it, so when he raises his right hand in front of Penelope, a picture will be taken. After Joanie finishes talking to them, he enters the Wilharn family's house. Upon entering the waiting room, he sees about 10 more boys waiting there. Just then, he notices a problem with the camera in his suit, so he hides behind the sofa to fix it. Suddenly, Penelope enters the room. Just seeing her, everyone leaves the room. But Joanie continues to fix the camera behind the sofa, thinking everyone has left. Penelope goes inside. After going there, Penelope finds a person sitting in the room who hasn't left yet. Penelope then sits beside a mirror in the room and starts talking to Joanie. The mirror was a special one through which Penelope could see Joanie, but Joanie couldn't see Penelope. They keep talking to each other from their respective rooms. Penelope starts to like Joanie as they talk more. So, she asks Joanie to come again the next day for a little test. Joanie agrees to her proposal and leaves for the day. Joanie goes outside, deposits the camera he had, sets up with Lemon, and goes home. Meanwhile, Penelope sits in her room thinking about Joanie. The next day, Joanie waits in the waiting room with the camera he had set up with Lemon, waiting for Penelope. Again, they engage in conversation from either side of the mirror. Joanie haphazardly arranges various musical instruments to impress Penelope. Despite playing all kinds of instruments terribly, Penelope finds much joy in it. Then, they continue to sit in their respective rooms and play a game of chess. As they play, Joanie invites Penelope to a place called Clover Deli for a date. They have a fun time chatting for quite a while, but even then, Penelope doesn't show up in front of Joanie by the end of the day. She tells him to come again the next day. Joanie comes again the next day. That day, Penelope asks Joanie to play the piano. Joanie plays the wrong notes on the piano. Penelope comes closer to Joanie from behind and holds his hand to teach him how to play the piano. Suddenly, when Joanie turns back, Penelope's face scares him, and he jumps. Penelope feels embarrassed and silently stands aside. Joanie tries to touch her nose when the hidden camera takes Penelope's picture. He curses because of the incident, but Penelope thinks that he cursed her and leaves. Joanie also feels upset and goes out. As Joanie leaves, Lemon comes out of his car and asks him, "Have you taken any pictures?" Joanie takes out his camera, breaks it on the ground, and tells Lemon, "Edward lied to you. Penelope is not at all like a monster. Leave the girl alone." Meanwhile, Penelope's mother and her assistant come out to search for Joanie. They see Joanie standing with Lemon, possibly a journalist who wants to take pictures of their daughter. So, they quickly lock the gate to prevent them from entering, but Joanie climbs over the gate to correct their misunderstanding. Penelope tries to persuade Joanie to marry her, but as Joanie is not a noble, he refuses. So Penelope asks him to leave, but she breaks down in tears. Joanie leaves, but even at home he keeps feeling like a culprit. So, he decides to return the money he took from Penelope. Overwhelmed by her sorrow and distress, decides to escape from her own home. Venturing outside, she covers her face with a veil and starts walking down the street. Upon reaching outside her house, she calls her parents, informing them that she won't return home and will stay outside from now on. With this declaration, she hangs up the phone. That night, she rents a room in a hotel in the same city to enjoy the beauty outside, since she had never left her own home before. Lemon and Edward somehow come to know that Penelope has left home. So, they hire an artist to draw a picture of Penelope and advertise it in the newspaper, promising a reward of 5,000 euros to anyone who can provide her picture. The artist, hearing Edward's description, portrays Penelope as a fearsome monster, as Edward always describes Penelope as a terrifying monster. As a result, the picture of Penelope turns out to be an extraordinary depiction of a frightening monster. Since the advertisement is published in all newspapers, Penelope herself sees it. Penelope's parents were searching for her frantically like mad people. Suddenly, Penelope's mother realized she didn't have her credit card with her. They contacted the police and traced where her credit card had been used. They found Penelope at that hotel. Seeing them, Penelope immediately slipped away from her hotel room. Now Penelope understands she can't use her mother's credit card anymore. But she doesn't have any money either without the credit card. Then she remembers the advertisement in the newspaper. She decides to sell her photos. She calls Lemon's office and tells them she'll sell her photo for 5,000 euros if they agree. Although Lemon is somewhat surprised, but he agrees immediately. That evening, Penelope goes to a photo booth, takes several photos of herself, fills an envelope, and gives it to Lemon, and Lemon gives her 5,000 euros in the envelope. Lemon takes those photos to his office and tells Edward there's nothing like what he described. The girl is not terrifying at all. Lemon decides not to publish the news, but Edward does not accept it. He says half the city thinks I'm crazy. No matter how this news is published, people will understand at least I'm not crazy. I told the truth. So he publishes Penelope's photo in the paper forcefully. Meanwhile, Penelope wanders around the city with a mask on her face. While wandering around, at one point she finds the pub where she was told about the pub by Joanie. She goes inside and orders a beer. As she drinks, she becomes friends with a girl named Annie. Annie takes her to roam around with her. Joanie got very upset when Penelope's photo was published in the paper. Upon hearing the news, he immediately went to Lemon's office and returned all the money to him. Lemon informed him that Penelope herself sold her photo. Disheartened, Penelope now wanders outside, having left home. Although surprised to hear this, he feels secretly pleased. That day, he decides to quit his gambling job and takes up a job playing piano in a nearby theater. On the other hand, Penelope spends her days covering her face and roaming around with Annie. One day, Penelope's parents spot her on the street. prompting Penelope to start running as soon as she sees them. She runs and ends up fainting in the pub. It becomes evident that she is none other than the famous Penelope from the newspaper. Her story spreads throughout the entire city. Penelope's parents take her to the hospital. In front of the hospital, hundreds of journalists gather to take her picture. 2 days later, Penelope recovers and is discharged from the hospital. She is bombarded with various questions from journalists as she leaves. Though she finds the questions quite flattering, she wonders if everyone is afraid to confront her, as the world seems to be embracing her now. She no longer feels the need to hide. Within a few days, Penelope's photos go viral everywhere, and everyone starts liking Penelope over time. People from different notable groups in the city come to take pictures with Penelope. In just a few days, Penelope becomes a celebrity. Meanwhile, Edward's father keeps pressuring Edward to marry Penelope. He believes that marrying a celebrity like Penelope would boost their company's business. Edward agrees reluctantly. His father's insistence ultimately convinces him to marry Penelope. Edward visits Penelope's house with the proposal, apologizing to her for everything that happened before. However, Penelope refuses to marry. Her mother pressures her a lot. Due to her mother's insistence, Penelope reluctantly agrees to the marriage in the end. The news of the wedding spreads quickly in the newspaper. Lemon, upon seeing this news, becomes quite annoyed. He searches for Joanie and tries to explain a lot to him. He tells him that he knows he likes Penelope. Edward is marrying her for selfish reasons. If he wants, he can break this. There is still time. However, Edward confesses that Penelope doesn't love him. She needs to marry into an aristocratic family. Her mother doesn't need a son-in-law from a poor family to end the curse. At this point, Lemon can't say anything more. He remains silent. The next day, the entire city is adorned for Penelope's wedding ceremony. While preparations are underway, Joanie sits by a river feeling miserable. As he sits there, he thinks about Penelope. Just before the wedding ceremony, when the priest asks Penelope if she agrees to the marriage, Penelope confesses in front of everyone that she doesn't want to marry. She runs away from there. Penelope's mother follows her into the house. When her mother tries to persuade her a lot, Penelope closes the door from inside. Then she tells her mother, "Edward doesn't love me, but I love myself just the way I am. I don't need anything else." Just saying this, she faints on the spot. After some time, Penelope regained her senses, and then her mother noticed that Penelope's nose had straightened. Penelope began to look just like an ordinary person. She could even understand herself by touching her face with her hands. Her face was no longer the same as before. Everything about her became natural. A few days later, to make her own life a bit more normal, Penelope took a job at a school for children. But still, she felt something incomplete in her own life. Suddenly one day, she found a file belonging to Joanie. Reading the file, she realized why Joanie had not agreed to marry her then. Penelope understood that Joanie had never seen her differently because of her appearance. So, she took Annie, her friend, with her, and covered her face with a mask to meet Joanie. Penelope told Joanie that she needed to use the bathroom and entered Joanie's room. Coming out of the bathroom, she started talking to Joanie in various ways. After a while, Joanie suspected it might be Penelope. So, he asked Penelope to remove her mask. Penelope asked why she should remove her mask, and Joanie said, "Your words feel very familiar, like someone very special to me." Then Penelope said, "Is it just someone familiar or someone special?" Joanie replied, "Very special, someone very close to my heart." After hearing this, Penelope realized that it was indeed true, and she had come to meet Joanie. They hugged each other tightly and kissed. Then Joanie said to her, "Please forgive me, Penelope. My identity was all a lie. I was not a boy from a noble family, and I did not have the power to remove your curse, so I refused to marry you then." Penelope then removed her mask and said, "I know this. Now it's not necessary anymore. My curse is no more." Then, they both continued to hug and kiss each other. Now, let's discuss why Penelope's nose became like that and what the curse was. Nearly 500–600 years ago, a boy from the Wilhern family fell in love with the daughter of the only maid in that house. He informed his family about marrying her, but his family did not agree to it. After a few days, due to an illness, the face of the maid's daughter became ugly, so the boy also did not marry her, and instead married a girl from another noble family according to the family's wishes. When the maid's daughter heard that news, she could not bear that betrayal. She ended her life by jumping from the roof of the house to take revenge. The mother of the girl learned witchcraft then. She came to the Wilhern house and cursed, saying, "The next girl born in this family will have a face like a pig. Until someone truly accepts her from the heart, her face will remain like a pig." Since then, until the birth of Penelope, no girl was born in that family, only boys were born. When Penelope was born, the curse was applied to her, and her nose became like that of a pig. But when Penelope truly accepted herself, she fulfilled the condition of the curse given by the witch mother. So, her nose became normal then. At the end of the story, we see that the witch lady had been living in that house for hundreds of years. With the end of Penelope's curse, she also left the house with her bag in hand, heading out into the street. If you enjoyed the story, please subscribe for more.